And we're live. Today we're beaming directly and live from Sydney, Australia and Maine in the United States with our special guest, Mr. Seth Pruzansky. And today what we're going to do is we're going to explore with Seth about the fundamental shift required by individuals committed to the development of higher consciousness to not only transform themselves, but to completely reverse the destructive path that the world is headed in. So we are delving into the big topics today. And when I gave Seth the opportunity to choose a topic and he came up with this, I thought this is going to be an absolute treat for everybody that tunes into the show today live, as well as in the coming days, weeks, and months. So without further ado, I would love to welcome Seth onto the show. Seth, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Michael. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate that.
Absolute pleasure, Seth. I've been really looking forward to this one due to, of course, just your nature. As soon as we connected on social media, I knew I had to have you on the show. And the topic that you've chosen for us to explore today is a wonderful topic. And I just know that a lot of people are going to resonate with this.
Especially
Yes. I think a good place to start, Seth, would be just to share a little bit about yourself and your background with us before we get into the topic today.
Okay. Well, first of all, again, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to be here too. This means a lot to me. It means a lot to me that you would reach out and want to do this, because what we're going to talk about tonight is something that I'm very passionate about. And it's something that I feel very qualified to speak about because of my life experience. I've had a crazy life, okay? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to pepper it. It's a miracle that I'm even alive right now. I have been through things that people don't survive through. And as a result of going through these things for so many points and moments and days and weeks and months and years of my life, that just, it would take a show just to talk about all these things. But as a result of going through these near-death experiences, being on the edge of self, really coming to terms with my own wellness, my own healing, my own expanded sense of awareness, I've really observed and paid close attention to what inhibits my ability to live in harmony with myself and the world and what prevents it. And I've really tried to fine-tune it to a science to understand it, because there's a big difference between being stuck in what we might call duality or opposition or all these different forces. And people think being one way is bad or being another is good, and they're not good or bad. These opposite forces that we feel in the world are actually all designed to not bring us to one way or the other, or bring us down, or make us feel empowered. They're meant to help us transcend the entirety of what we're used to perceiving things as and bring us to another level of perception. I know it might sound kind of intense, but we'll refine it. We'll get down to it. So yes, it's a miracle I'm alive. And I've been so aware of my own process of healing through things that are crazy. So.
Yeah, intense is good, Seth. Intense is very good, and I'm loving this opening introduction already. So you mentioned that you've survived some things that a lot of people wouldn't.
Yes.
What sort of stuff are we talking here? Like life and death situations?
Things that were beyond my control. I've been in severe car accidents that I've almost died.
Wow.
I've hurt, in accidents on cars, bicycles, motorcycles, things of that nature. Drug addiction. I went through severe drug addiction in my late teens and early 20s. I've been completely recovered from that for over 20 years. But I went through a level of drug addiction that people don't recover from. And I was so sick and I was so on the edge. And I actually overdosed 9 different times and woke up in, vomit and, just that kind of a situation. And kicked all that stuff cold turkey, like really came to terms with, do I want to live in this world or not? And it was like, yes, I want to live. So what is it going to take to really face the choices I've made to come out of this? And there's only one choice that can be made. It's like, how much do you love life, and how much are you going to demonstrate to the life that's animating your being, how much you're willing to work with it through whatever situations or trials or tribulations that you're facing in order to get through these circumstances. I've been incarcerated. I spent 3 years in federal prison, which was brutal to go through something like that, where every day was literally, you know, back against the wall, just in situation. And I didn't do anything bad. It's nothing like that. It's just, I went in for marijuana. And again, these are things that brought me to the point where you have no choice but to become the biggest victim in the world and allow it to take you down or not. I've been through physical illness that is so crippling that I literally could not eat for, you know, weeks and months at a time, and just eating minimal amounts of food, just doing a green juice a day, eating a handful of sprouts, just, you know, on and on and on, lots of different things like that. But the thing that always happened, no matter if these experiences were chosen, like addiction, I chose to do that to myself, or whether it was a car accident, which I didn't really consciously choose to do that, the ultimate experience of it all was always the same. You know, you come to a point where you realize you're not who you think you are. This world is not what you think you are. And what you actually are is this miraculous animating force that's beating your heart, that's causing your lungs to breathe, that's allowing thoughts to arise in your mind. That's what you actually are. So when we talk about creating a fundamental shift in the world, it's not about, okay, I'm going to be socially active, I'm going to be proactive, I'm going to go petition here, I'm going to do this or that. The fundamental shift that is required in order to reverse the seemingly destructive trend that our species is on begins with the individual. And it begins with the individual asking the question, not who am I, because who am I, the personality, the ego, that stuff, that comes later. We can figure that out as we go. There's an even more crucial question that needs to be asked, which is, what am I? And until we as people, as an ego, as this belief system that, you know, aggregates and makes up the bulk of who we think we are, until we focus on what we are and come to terms with it and connect to our own inner nature, which is actually something that's very tangible and very easy to connect with when you understand what it is, called coherence. We're going to begin with that, and we'll get into all that, what coherence actually is. But when you've developed high levels of heart, brain, and then gut, and eventual whole body coherence, that prepares you for much deeper states of conscious exploration of your own being. So, go ahead. I'm trying to give space, because if I go off, I'll forever.
No, that's great. Okay, Seth. So let me take you back to the point in your life where you're going through such intense things like prison, drug addiction. Like, let me take you back to that point. What was the thing that created the initial spark for you to start to walk in this direction to where you are now?
Believe it or not, I was actually, as a young child, my earliest memories are existing in this state of coherence that we're going to get a lot into. And what I mean by that is, I had a perfect childhood, by the way. And what I mean by perfect, I had parents who loved me more than anything. We lived deep in the woods of northern Maine, and I would just sit outside in my front yard every day that it was warm outside, and I would stare at the tree line. And as I would stare at the tree line, everything kept getting brighter and brighter and brighter until all I could see was just white. Everything would turn white with my heart beating through it. And when I was in that state, I began, even as a young child, before I had any intellectual or cognitive abilities at all to really conceptualize this stuff or try to form an opinion about what I thought it was, I was able to understand that the essence of what I was unified throughout everything. There's a unified field of conscious energy that is emanating from the core of our being, and it is connected throughout all things great and small. It's in me, it's in you, it's in every single thing that we perceive in this world. Now, the only place that we think it's not is in the way we perceive things. And that can be easily overcome when we really want to. So I was born with that and I knew it, but it's, for whatever reason, it's been my journey through this world to experience the extremes of life, to feel the things that a lot of people don't want to feel, because there's actually a collective void in what people process emotionally and sensually and all these things. And look, we all face the deeper questions of life. We all struggle with the fear of death, of all these different aspects or components of our life that causes fear. A lot of people will just not go there. They won't even process it. They won't even try to consider what it may or may not mean to them. And so that creates a void of feelings. Those feelings that people are not feeling still go somewhere. They exist in the universe. And it's up to the empaths who are, even if we're not willing, we somehow end up having to face these feelings and process them. And it's a tremendous amount of work. So me going through the things I did was I needed to experience these extremes, these extreme polarities in life through all these different multitudes and facets of expression in order to really come to terms with what is the motivating factor, the balance point, the point of it all between these two forces. And it's coherence. It's this balance point. When you, the person you believe yourself to be, is in coherence with your heart, that's where it all begins. There's some great tools, there's some stuff available out there we can talk about, but that's the gateway, because we're stuck in our heads, most of us. We believe we're this person, we believe we're having this human experience. We get caught up in these patterns of belief that, if we don't understand how powerful they are, they can act as a prison and really kind of imprison our thought process and our feelings and our experience in this world. But when we understand how powerful they are and what the source of those feelings are and where they come from, then suddenly we can really use that same process that imprisons us to set ourselves free, to shift our life, to live in a state of whole body coherence that is in coherence with the forces of life itself, the creative principle.
And Seth, overcoming those beliefs, this is a pretty intense thing to do for the vast majority of people. It can even be like terribly shocking in the initial stages, the realization and then interacting with those beliefs and coming to the realization that they're imprisoning us. Can you tell us a little bit about how you yourself worked through that during this intense period in your life?
Yeah, one thing that I do is I stopped subscribing to the us and them mentality. You know what I mean? And people especially in the new age or the spiritual communities or the awakening communities or whatever you want to call these things, when they hear somebody say, guess what? There is no us and them. There is no government. There is no forces out there that are preventing us from being in alignment with all of reality except for ourselves. We are literally the primary force that is preventing our own soul's evolutionary growth through us. And if we can really tune into that, we might just find that these forces that we perceive as seeking to inhibit our growth are actually really trying to push to further its evolution. We just have to stop being afraid of it. We just have to realize that there's a part of us that is being spurred on, it's being egged on, it wants to be motivated by our perception of what we think is trying to oppress us. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's really trying to set us free. So for me, it was ending my own dualistic perception of these extremities that I thought I perceived in the world. Because again, like I said earlier, there's way more going on than we could ever perceive. This world is not what we think it is, and we are not who we think we are. This is all part of the illusion. But the reality is something's real. This isn't an illusion. It's just the perception of what we think it is illusory. But there's something very real here. There's something very powerful. And that is what we who feel what we call awakening or enlightenment or spirituality or whatever, that's what we're being called to pay attention to.
So, Seth, when you say that this is illusory, like what we think it is illusory, but there's something real going on.
Yeah.
Let's delve into that a little bit more.
All right, so let's start from the top down, right? Because right now the world is, let's look at it like this, the world is backwards. It's outside in. So we were born into this world as this animating principle, this miraculous, divine, whatever you want to call it, this profound, ineffable, indescribable, unimaginable force that's animating our body. That's what we are. But then all of a sudden, we start getting conditioned with these beliefs, these ideas. We get taught that the world is a certain way and that we have to be a certain type of person in this world. And we believe it because we don't really know any better. And a lot of the times the people teaching us don't really know any better either. So I take a top-down approach. Let's look at it from the soul. Okay, we can call it the soul, whatever you want to call it. This animating principle, this energy that we truly are, is the number one. That's the first thing. When we come to terms with, I'm not the one who's beating my own heart. I'm not the one causing my lungs to breathe. Yes, I can have an effect on these things. These autonomic functions that are happening within the temple of my body they don't come from me, Seth, the person who I think I am. I can affect those things, but I'm not responsible for the derivation of their source. So when I get beyond myself, when I get over myself, when I just stop thinking that it's all about me and that this is my experience and then I can just relax. I can let go and I can start really attuning my awareness to this miracle that I am, that you are, that we all are. So when that happens and we commit to that, then everything changes. So our mind works in patterns, right? The same thing that limits us and imprisons us also sets us free. And it's really about these patterns and understanding that. So we shift the focus. We focus on what we are, the miracle of life. This body is a temple. These organs, every single organ in our body, all the different compartments of our brain, of our glands that are all through us, our heart, our stomach, everything is literally creating its own energy. And when we exist through the intelligence of the heart, it's almost like it turns into a super organ. Okay, your heart begins to wake up and you realize, okay, that's what it's about. This beating heart, whatever's causing that to beat, that's what I really am. And if who I am has any chance of existing in this world and being at peace and at harmony with it, I need to focus on what I am. But when you do that, your brain lights up because it's being led by your heart. See, the brains run away from us. We believe it's all about the mind and the brain. It's not. It's about the energy that's animating it. So we got to go back to the source. And when we focus on the source of what we are, which we're all able to do because it's very tangible, and there's a feeling associated with these states of coherence that I'm talking about. And when an individual understands it, they don't have to go through the crazy things that I did or that other people did. You can do it gently, but with discipline, to keep doing it, to really train yourself to identify not who you think you are, but with what you are. And again, what you are is this miraculous animating principle that's causing all these autonomic functions in your body to happen. I forgot the question.
But no, that you answered that really, really well. Really well. I mean, I personally resonated with a lot of what you just said, especially, the stuff from the mind to the heart, working through the heart. I find that the deeper I go into my own journey, the more I realize that it's all about really working through the heart. And by doing our work through our heart, it kind of sets our intent in the right way that connects us with that force that you speak of, that makes our heart beat, which is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Right in tune with that, brother.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the heart, and let's talk about coherence, because, you know, for a long time I didn't have seen, like, now in this world, like, there's so many of us, we're really now coming to terms with this, you know, like the awakening point. So many people everywhere around the world are literally now like, holy crap, they're like, something's going on. There's way more going on. It's not about me. It's about me, but it's about how connected I feel to everything. And so we're really trying to find a language, because the language that we're using right now to express these things is very limited. Now, there is a way to express these things, and I'm sure there's probably been languages in the past that are better able to express them. But in this global culture that we now find ourselves in, we're seeking to find a language in order to communicate, in order to give, you know, identification with these experiences that we're having, and in order to share and communicate it with each other. And again, we've always heard it. We've always been taught love is the way. We know that. We know love is the way. But we got to really come to terms with what love is, because there's so many words that each person is going to have their own associations with. And we really got to kind of let go of all that stuff if we're going to get to the heart of the matter and really, really tune into what this is all about and why we're here. And so that begins with something that's called heart-brain coherence. When I was a young child and I would sit there and for hours and hours every day, I mean, my parents were like, why do you just want to go outside and sit there all the time? And the reason why is because it was accompanied by a feeling that it felt so good to me that that's what I wanted to dwell in, to not be in that space, to not exercise that feeling and develop its potential in me, which is basically when you feel that feeling, you can then use your mind to direct it in other parts of your body, in other areas around the world. But I would just do this naturally and automatically. And to not do that didn't feel good. But when I was a child, I didn't know what, you know, I didn't have the words to even really understand this stuff. But as I grew older and really, really focused on it, and later learned that there's actually a term for it. It's called heart-brain coherence. It was like, oh my God. And there's a place called Heart Math, and I'm not affiliated with them. I have nothing to do with them, but they've created these great apps that you just put a little clip on your ear and you have it on your phone. There's like an app on it, or you can do it on your computer or whatever. And it monitors your heart rate, and it tells you when you're in high coherence levels or low coherence levels. And when you've trained yourself to stay in these high coherence levels, then suddenly things begin to happen. And for me, it was like this wake-up call, in that when I was maintaining high levels of coherence, it's like, oh my God, this is exactly the state that I naturally and automatically engaged in as a child the whole time. So it's like, it's coherence. That's all it is. What is coherence? It's really coming to terms with, because most people are stuck in their head, right? We're all up here. We're just living in this life. But most people forget that there's even anything down below their neck. You know, it's literally like people I talk to, they're just in their head. I'm me. I'm this person. This is my problem. I'm a victim. The government's out to get me. You know, they're spraying the toxins everywhere. There's chemtrail. Like, stop. Okay, maybe all that stuff's happening, but is it making you empowered? Is it giving you the ability to really tune into the frequency of love? And most people know it's not doing that. Okay, so then why focus on it and be afraid of it? Why not instead say, all right, something's out of balance, something's out of alignment, everything seems to be a mess. What's it going to take to realign all this? What's it going to take is for the individual, you, me, to really diligently work at developing high levels of coherence within our body. So when our heart becomes what guides us, because now they say the heart has more neurons in the brain, they're different neurons, but more than the brain. When you feel your heart and you understand, like, okay, love, what love really is from a human perspective, we're not even going to get into the outer realms. That's different. But from a human perspective, love is the fact that your heart is beating. That's the most important form of understanding love at first. And so when you realize, okay, love is the fact that I get an opportunity to exist in this human form. That's love. That's the gift. Then suddenly things change. You're not stuck in your head and you're all mental and crazy and thinking everything's out to get you, but you're feeling that, okay, the world might be out of balance, might be crazy, but there's something in me that's not out of balance, and that's very sane, and that's very practical, and that is guided by feeling, by intuition, by something that I can actually trust. Because when I try to trust my brain, I get into all kinds of trouble, hence doing drugs, hence going to prison, hence all these stupid things that I did to myself because I knew better, but I wasn't doing better, and so I paid greater. So when you understand what heart-brain coherence is, they become like a super organ suddenly. Suddenly your heart is the leader. And then it's no longer about you. Your brain follows, your ego, your mind, because it's like, yes, this feeling is it. That's what it is. And that feeling's connected to everything. But then the mind is like, okay, wait a minute. This actually serves me better than I serve myself, because suddenly I'm relaxed and I feel better and I can make better decisions because I'm going to make decisions that are going to further support this inner state of what we're calling coherence. And then what happens is very interesting, because the super organ between the heart and the brain, once that lights up, they start communicating with each other. And this profound interplay goes on, like two lovers coming together who have been waiting to be together for lifetimes, and they just can't get enough. They can't express enough. They are so in love that this coherence suddenly transfers to the gut. In my situation, everybody might have a different experience, but it'll lead to all this eventually. Then suddenly your heart and your brain and your gut are communicating. That's more of a whole body coherent state. Then all of the other organs and glands and parts of your body literally get lit up with this level of coherence. And that's what we mean when we say the body is a temple. I've gone through, months and months of being sick, having physical illness that really has its source in me not wanting to feel the things that I was kind of put here to feel. Again, there's a collective void of feelings that people are not willing to face and not willing to feel, and they accumulate over countless generations, but they still have to be processed. This universe is a perfect accounting system, and the only way we're going to level it out or neutralize the scales and bring it back to balance, to the point where all of this comes from, is to first, be aware of and develop and maintain that state of balance in ourselves through whole body coherence. And then suddenly everything changes. You still exist. The person you think you are is there, but you realize that you are this profound animating force that is in the temple of the human body. And all your organs, your best friends, your family, that's what they are. They're your best friends, they're your family, they're your loved ones. They are everybody and everything that is most important to you in this world, first and foremost. When you are on the same page, as them, or the same word eventually as what you want to get to, then you light up, okay? The unified field of conscious energy that you are. Suddenly you're no longer contained in this one little point of your human existence. You begin to embody the whole of your body. And when you begin to develop, when you're in the whole of your body and you begin to develop higher levels of coherence, you're no longer even in this body anymore. You're animating it, but it's almost like your body becomes an antenna for the very consciousness, the miraculous, ineffable, animating principle that you are to exist. And then suddenly, not only are you having all this profound, beautiful inner coherence with your organs, with your body, with everything going on, but a much deeper interplay of sharing, receiving, transmitting, and receiving and transmitting frequency with universal forces, with forces that we would perceive to be much greater than us, that are actually us in another expression, communicating to this part of us so that a unification can be more fully grounded into this human reality, things begin to happen. And this is the kind of shift I'm talking about. It sounds complicated, sounds like a lot, but it's not. And when we begin to embody this, even at lower levels, then the way we interact with the world, the people around us, the forces that we perceive are trying to, oppress us, is so different. We're able to forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. We're able to understand that they're actually struggling to find their own way, and they're expressing these negative forces or these polarizing, divisive forces that we feel are being cast at us. They're doing this because they don't know any better. And until those who are willing to step up and love unconditionally with a frequency that is beyond what we believe it to be as a human, what we think the human definition of love is, when we begin to turn into the universal love that we are, that's animating all of us, that's beating our hearts, those negative forces will melt in the face of that. Because that is the creative impulse of life is the strongest thing there is. It's where all life comes from. It's the source of life. This duality is just that source of life expressing itself in all these different ways so that it can more fully come to terms with its own expression of life. That makes sense.
Wow. So I mean, as individuals, we go through this process where our heart starts to lead our mind. So the mind has got very masculine attributes. The heart's got very feminine attributes. And as the heart starts to take the lead and the intellect begins to serve the heart, we see real change, enlightened change, where we become aware of what's kind of really going on. We start to see through the illusion. And I couldn't help but get the feeling listening to you just now that not only are there individuals going through that, but as a collective, it seems that the global society is itself shifting from this masculine intellectual dominance into something that is beginning to serve a heart-centered awakening, and it's slowly kind of becoming felt.
Thank God, right? How exciting is this to exist in these?
Yes.
Because it's palpable, it's tangible, it's everywhere, it's going on. I mean, at first it was like this pop culture kind of spiritual thing happening, but now it's not. It's moving. People know it. They might not be able to articulate it, but they know that something is happening. And we're trying to find a language for it. We're trying to really come to terms with it in our own way, as a community, as a culture, whatever. But this is where it begins, is with our commitment to it. Because the reality is, we were born into this world as this animating principle. We didn't have these thoughts. We didn't have these beliefs. That stuff hadn't formed yet. But that same thing that was beating the heart, that was there. That was already formed. That was already preordained. And so when we focus what little bit of intelligence we have in our human minds and focus on the profound, innate, infinite intelligence of the heart, that alignment takes place. And things begin to happen. They really do. Your own unique gifts, your own creative expression, because we all are, even though we're all unified, even though we're all one, we have this beautiful gift of being able to express the one truth through whatever modalities or talents or our voice or our music or our businesses or our structures, whatever. We all have the ability to express the deepest, greatest, or even the superficial truths of life in a way that is in alignment with life and that serves everybody.
And as the heart starts to illuminate this darkness, this it's like we've gone through a kind of dark age, even though technologically it seems like we're kicking butt. it's almost like we've gone through this age of darkness where we're all blind, we're all bumping into each other, we're all bumping into everything clumsily, and now it's like the light of awareness that's coming from this shift, where we're starting to live through our hearts, is kind of really starting to guide us in this direction that you're speaking of. And I just find it so exciting to hear so many people speaking through their hearts in their own terms, in their own language, but there's always this common denominator of the heart, always. It's fascinating and it's beautiful to see.
So, absolutely. So what are the next levels of that? That's what's really fascinating to me, because when you begin to have this experience and you know what it is and you develop it, even at a moderate level, amazing things begin to happen. But what's the potential of it? Where can it go? That's what really, really fascinates me, because suddenly it's like, okay, it's not just this thing beating your heart. That's just how you're perceiving it from a human perspective. What is it that's actually beating your heart? Follow it, use your human perspective, your perception, and open your mind and begin to follow the derivation of its source. Because just because it feels like it's centralized in this one place and it's doing this thing, it's not. That's just the appearance. It's coming from something that is much greater than we perceive ourselves to be in this human form. But we are beyond capable of coming to terms with what that force is. One thing that is really so the higher we develop these states of coherence, the more hyper attentive and the more hyper aware we become of the truth, the ultimate reality of what is causing all this stuff to happen. The invisible worlds become visible. The unfelt aspects of this universe become felt. Look at and it's really common sense, actually. You go outside at night, and you look up at the stars, and it's like, oh my God, like how you can't process that with the way your mind is used to processing things in this world, the way you could say we've been taught to perceive reality. Same thing happens when you look down on the ground and you focus on the minutia of it, the little tiny details of anything, the earth, and a piece of dirt or rock, like whatever. The same thing happens. Either way leads to this infinite expression of the one life that exists in and around everything. But how do you really come to terms with how profound that is and not get stuck in these mental states that, oh my God, it's so big, it's so overwhelming, I can't deal with it, I'm not going to deal with it? Because in a lot of levels, this whole dark age that we've been going through, this journey, away from the heart or whatever, is really this thing of like coming to terms with, infinity, trying to separate itself from itself so that it can rediscover itself, because that's what it does. It's very difficult to understand at these highest levels. But the higher levels of coherence that we develop as individuals, the more these deeper, higher truths really begin to be revealed in a way that we can understand them. And one really profound thing that has helped me tremendously is something they call it hypnagogic states. And you talk about duality. A lot of people don't even realize that duality begins with us. Just the sleep wake cycle is duality. Is it good or bad? No, it's not. It's part of a cycle that creates a balance. When it's out of balance, it creates imbalance in our life. But when we understand, there's a waking cycle in our human form. We're awake as these humans. We go about our day, we do whatever, and then we go to sleep at night. We're entering into two profound states of awareness. And most people don't know how to link those two together. They don't really understand. They know when they go to sleep, they feel refreshed the next morning, they wake up, but they don't understand from a consciousness perspective level what's actually taking place. And that's really interesting when you think about it. So for me, I wanted to understand, what is taking place? What is this? And one thing that would happen to me when I was a child, that would happen a lot. And again, I didn't Now they call this a hypnagogic state. I didn't know this either as a kid, but I would have these experiences of experiencing this. And what it is simply between the normal waking state of our everyday human awareness and our sleep state of dreaming, there is another state of consciousness in between those two. So the higher levels of whole body coherence that you have developed, okay, if you're focusing on whole body coherence, you can begin to enter into these hypnagogic states naturally. It's just a natural expression of high levels of coherence. But there's another way too. By developing coherence and developing the heart. Okay, the reason why the heart is so important and the state of love that everybody's talking about is because to really understand these deeper levels of truth that we're ultimately really seeking to come to terms with if we're truly committed to this path, it can be very scary at first. And the way for it to be less scary and actually to eventually become not scary at all is loving life, having this profound trust for the process of life, which can only be accomplished by the individual really developing these profound states of heart, brain, whole body coherence. And so in that state of coherence, when you go to sleep at night, this is what would happen to me as a kid. I would go to sleep and without planning, without even trying to, one time something happened and it blew my mind even as a kid because I'm falling asleep, but I remember I was still keeping my mind aware and my body's going to sleep and it's relaxing and it's like starting to go off. And my body went to sleep, but my mind stayed awake. And suddenly I wasn't awake and I wasn't sleeping, but I was in both states at the same time in a hyper aware state. And in that place is this creative force, this creative principle that we're talking about. And it was so freaky to me the first time that it happened because it was like, what is this? There's an entire other world in my own world that I knew nothing about. And I would actually be very afraid of going to sleep for a long time because it was so intense and I didn't understand it. And it took me going through all these really challenging things that I went through and learning to love them unconditionally. It's not the jailer who's doing it to me. It's not the government. It's not the drugs. It's not the people around me. It's not none of that. They're just reflections of the creative principle of life that are egging me on, that are teaching me as a soul to evolve and grow. And so when we, as the individuals that we believe ourselves to be, when we approach life from, okay, I trust the process of life, I love it. It can be scary. There's things that are definitely really challenging, but you know what? I'm going to work through it because, I do trust it. I know I do. I can feel that I do. And if it means staring a 10,000-eyed monster in the face and not turning away in fear and actually trying to love that ugly monster, I'm willing to do that. And so if we approach life with that kind of conviction and that kind of willingness to stand up to whatever it is that we perceive as causing harm to us or fear to us or causing us to be afraid, we're going to find out eventually that it actually isn't what we thought it was. It isn't what we perceived it to be. It's just life trying to get us to go to the next levels, to level up.
It's interesting that you mentioned this place. We can use that word in between waking reality and the sleep realm. Probably realm is a better word than place. And in that realm, in that state of consciousness, it's amazing the attributes that we have come to accept as normal to us in waking reality. Some of those attributes are there in this middle environment that don't really need to be there, but because we're so human, we bring them with us. And I've experienced that myself, for instance, walking, moving, things like that. And it's an absolutely fascinating place to be, an environment that is like a hyper learning environment as well. So you experienced this as a child yourself, Seth?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and to me as a child, it was more natural than anything. But, you know, just because people are like, oh, you were born with that. No, we were all born with it. I'm not any different than anybody else. I'm no special. I'm not any, you know, there's nothing special about me. I have made such terrible decisions in this life that have led me into these tough, horrible things. People don't need to make those decisions to tap into what I'm talking about. Yes, these decisions ultimately led me to a place where I could have a much more profound understanding of this stuff. But was it necessary? When I look back at it all, no, it wasn't. Because these states of consciousness, we're all born into the world with it. It is a natural expression. Now, the imbalance that we perceive in the world is actually an imbalance in our perception of reality. That's where it begins. And what I mean by that is we have a very off-kiltered, limited perspective or perception of reality that can only be strengthened, like the muscles of our body, by working our perceptive muscles. There's many different techniques. You can, a lot of people like to start with the mind. I call it expanding the inner and outer edges of the thought process. Just as we would take, physical nutrition to feed our body or, to get our health to the next level, there's a level of spiritual nutrition, you could call it, or beauty nutrition. It's literally, go out in the world and open your mind, find the things that are beautiful about the world and allow them to imprint themselves into you. That's why nature is so healing to people. That's why animals, pets, children, all these different things, because they put us in a state of coherence. And when we start to develop this state of coherence that I'm talking about, then your perception of reality begins to grow. You're flexing the muscles of your perceptive abilities. The things that are invisible, or unseen or unknown become seen, become known, and become experienced. Because there's actually nothing separating all these except for our limited perception of reality. So,
Seth, we've got a question here from one of the audience members, the Tasmanian native, good friend of ours. He's asking, Seth, I do have to ask you, do you still have bad days, though, don't you? Or have you taught yourself to be calm all the time?
I absolutely have. I don't want to call them bad days. I don't want to be careful about the language we use because, again, a lot of this is disassociating what we think certain things mean to us so that we can open up our minds and open up our perception and begin to perceive more of what the world is actually offering us at all times. With that said, yes, I do. Of course, I have challenging days. We all do. But it's in the way that I approach these challenges that enslave me or set me free. If I'm, drudging through and dragging my feet and, oh my God, why is this happening to me? Then what's going to happen? Life is going to set me back a little bit. But if I can just get beyond that and say, you know what? I might not like the appearance of something in my life. I might not like the way it feels. But what if my resistance to it is actually life egging me on, like growth pains or pangs, whatever. Like, growth isn't always comfortable, but it's necessary in order to develop, in order to evolve, in order to grow. So it's what I've trained myself to do is, instead of being defeated by the challenges of life, face them head on. Like I said, you see that 10,000-eyed monster staring you down, wants to eat you and devour you. Do you run away in fear, screaming fear like, what? Or do you face it and say, all right, maybe you're not what I think you are. Maybe you're a part of me that either I haven't faced within my own existence or a collective part of me that my own genetics, my own ancestors haven't faced. And maybe I have to face this now. Whatever it is, I'm willing to face it. And I'm going to face it because I know that through thick and thin, through the trials and tribulations of life, the one thing that has existed in all these times when I've almost died and never came back and can't even believe that I did come back was this profound love for life. And again, it's not like a mental concept of love. It's something that I can feel. And it's a harmony that exists in me. It's a harmony that exists in everything. And when we don't feel that harmony, there's just an imbalance that we have to confront and deal with. So that's how I face these perceived challenges. I just know they're life that are helping me grow. Like my life experiences. And in some ways, you almost kind of welcome challenges. When you see that stuff, you're like, and I've affirmed that so many times. I'm like, bring it on. Let's do it. Let's go for like whatever you want me to. I mean, I've said this so many times to life. I've affirmed it. Like, I am your servant, the source of life, whatever you are, whatever you want me to go through, I will face it. I will do it. And I'll tell you what, I have gotten my butt kicked for doing that. But you know what? After I get knocked down and it all comes back together and I'm back in my being, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do that again. But then I find myself, you know what? I love life. I'm ready to grow. I'm ready to face the challenges. And I end up affirming it again. So that's just me. That's my approach.
Seth, Joe has just put up a question, and I think this one is this one's something that we can really delve into, and hopefully you can reach out and help Joe out with this one. Joe is sharing that he feels defeated every single day. It's a hard thing to turn it around, at least for him. And as soon as I saw Joe's message on the screen, I felt I'm feeling you, Joe. So yeah, let's go into this, Seth, for Joe.
Is he able to respond to me in real time, or?
Yes, he probably can. Joe, Seth's going to ask you a question now, so if you can type it up, we'll put the comment up so you can have a little bit of a dialogue with Seth.
If it's not too personal, I'd like to know maybe a little bit